heaven is there. And heaven, no problems, no sadness, no worries. It's forever. But guess what? How do you get to heaven? What goes to heaven? Yes, what happens is all you take with you to the next world is your polished heart. If it's covered with little bits of dust and dirt, it's not good to go, is it? You want it. If you were going to go on a camping trip, children, what would you take on the camping trip? I couldn't hear. Tents? Tents. Sleeping bags? Would you pack some sandwiches and food? So if you're going on a camping trip, you know what to take. What if you're going on the journey to the next fantastic world? What can you take? What gets you there? Yes.
Good deeds. Good deeds.
Good deeds, yes, yes. Yes, the polished heart. That's it. So the idea of the polished heart is that we've all got these beautiful hearts. For example, let me tell you a story about my granddaughters Sophia and Layla. Once Layla, Sophia was bigger. She was like 5 or 6. And she took Layla's toys, and Layla was 2 or 3. And Layla went, ooh, she went crying off. So I said to Sophia, I said, did you know you have 2 selves? She went, 2 selves? I said, yes. You have the not real false self. They're not real. And then you have that bad self, that takes toys for your sister. It doesn't help mommy. It doesn't calm that self when it's called. But then you have your real self. That's the polished heart, right? Your luminous, beautiful, oh, I see a heart out there. You've got a silver heart. It's her purse, it's a heart. Can I have that? Can I hold it up? No? Yes, it's just perfect. Can I borrow it for just a moment? Oh yeah, this is lovely. I just looked out and there it was. Thank you, dear. Look at this. Okay, so we have the real heart. So I said to Sophia, who took Layla's toys? And she went like this. Not my real self, right? You're perfectly good children, aren't you? You've got a real heart and a real self. So if your mommy says, you're naughty, you always do that, go to your room, you've done it again, she's not talking to your real self. She's just talking to that little lower. We call it in Arabic the nafs al-amara. It's the little ego self that wants you to do bad things. It says, they're calling, I'll pretend I'm asleep. Mommy is calling, get up for school. I'm just gonna not listen. But you know what? That happens, but you can, okay, this is the story. You're lying in bed. It's early in the morning. Your mother says, get up, dress, come to breakfast. And the lower self thinks, I'm gonna pretend I'm asleep, right? And then there's a self that God gives you that's like a conscience that blames. And it says, what is your name? Adam. It says, Adam, you know, go ahead and get up. You know, this is the right thing to do, you know, and you'll feel fine once you're up. And then you go back to, no, I'm just gonna lie here 10 more minutes. You know, and mothers and fathers do this too. It's not just children, it's all of us. But then you can watch that conversation. There's someone saying, you should get up, I'm gonna wait in bed. You should go ahead and get up. But then you have another higher self. And Al-Ghazali explains to you, that's your real self. The real self, and it's watching. It's watching the conversation. I don't want to help mommy. You should really help mommy. I don't want to share my toys. You should share toys. But the real self is watching, and that's who you really, really, really are. And in the stories, the grandmother explains this to the children. So when I was a little girl, once I came in the kitchen, and I was feeling like really like a good person, and my mother was washing the dishes, and I thought for a moment, gosh, maybe I should offer to give a help. And then I thought, no, I'm just going to go to my room. And you know, I felt I'm a really bad person. Am I a really bad person, or was I just imagining I was the bad self? Don't ever imagine you're the lower self. You're the real self. That's who you really are, you know? And when you speak to your friends and each other, don't be mean. Talk to the real heart in each other. Address the real heart. You know, in Japan, when a person meets another person, they bow like this. When they do that, they're bowing to the real self. And they have a word, sen, which means really good, special, beautiful, holy self. So if your name is Adam, I'd say Adam Sen, right? And it used to be in English, in the Christian religion, if we met someone, we said, your godliness. Because we're all coming from Allah, isn't that true? Have you heard there's one soul? We're all one soul. And then, we're all one soul. And then what happens is, we are divided into tribes and people and different people. But here's the issue about the heart, is that, you know, if you can imagine, like, let's say, a symbol for Allah is the sun, right? Nur, light. And each of us has a house with a little courtyard or a backyard. Do we all have little space behind our house, a little courtyard? And that light, the sunlight, doesn't it go into everybody's courtyards? It's the same light, isn't it? In your yard. So everybody's got the same light. Okay, why aren't we all the same? Because we have walls. There's the garden walls. So I'm me. I'm grandmother Aisha. I'm not him. Well, you know what? What are those walls made of? The walls that keep us apart from each other and keep us from loving each other are all the naughty things like envy. I wish I had what he had. I wish I had that kind of t-shirt. Wanting what someone else has been given. We shouldn't want what other people have, because guess what? You will discover, and Ghazali will teach you, that each one of us is given exactly what we need to purify our hearts and to polish our hearts and be near to Allah. So everybody's been given a special way to do that. So look at your life and be happy with what Allah has given you. Everything in your life is just right. Don't wish for somebody else's. That keeps the walls up. What if you get angry? Do any of you ever get angry, children? You do, occasionally? You don't want to be angry. You want to be peaceful. That keeps your walls up. Do anybody argue? Any of you are, oh yes, you argue. Imam al-Ghazali, I do too. I'm not going to do it. I didn't want it that way. Why aren't we going? All right. What Ghazali says about arguing is that when you argue, you're trying to be the right one. I'm the one, I got it right? And what does that do? Walls, stronger and stronger, keeping you from your heart, right? Putting dots on your heart. Dirty dots, you don't want that, do you? No, don't argue. And you know, it says in the Quran, and this is something that al-Ghazali writes about, that when you're in an argument, you're the wrong one, if you give up the argument, Allah will build a special little house for you in paradise. But if you're right and give up the argument, He will give you a palace in paradise. This is ways of saying, it's a story, an imaginary story, it's not probably a house, that if you don't argue, if you're peaceful, you are actually polishing your heart. And you know, in the end, you have to have a polished heart. That's when you die, it's all you take with you, your polished heart. So we're being given lifetimes to get rid of lying, arguing, envying. What are some other bad things you can do? Yes? Bullying. Oh, she really got it. Do you think it's nice to tease other children? Terrible. Don't you hate it? Have any of you ever been teased? You have, haven't you? Me too. It's terrible. And we don't want to do that ever. You know, if you see someone being teased in your school, go over and say to the person teasing, you know, that's not right. You know, you can do that because you're a shining heart. That's terrible. And what about leaving people out? Have you ever been left out? I used to be left out. I wanted to be with a certain group of friends and they didn't accept me. This is not all right. And at school, if you see people being left out, go over to that little person who's left out and say, I will be your friend. And then your heart will glow. Be your real self, because you're not the naughty self. But you've been given the naughty self to work with in order to get back to the pure heart, to meet Allah. So these are some of the ideas of Ghazali. And now, what we're going to do is, oh, here, I'll give you your purse back. You're going to catch it? No, I'm not going to throw it out. Can you pass it behind me? Thank you very much. So another book we published, and you can see, how could I have told you about a book called Painting Heaven, Polishing the Mirror of the Heart, if I didn't tell you this whole story before, right? You had to know who Ghazali was. You had to know that you have to polish your heart in order to get to the next world. And guess what? Every one of you has been given a million ways to do it every single day. Do any of you, are any of you old enough to pray yet? Are any of you praying? Are you too young? You pray? Some of you are praying? Do you do wudu? Have you seen your parents washing and preparing for prayer? You do, you have? Well, I'm right now working on book 3. How am I doing on time? I have no sense of time. All right, so just before we start this, book 3, which Al-Ghazali wrote, is called the book, The Mysteries of Purity, the Mysteries of Cleaning Before Prayer. And you know, so here's a story that we tell. Once upon a time, in this village, this Muslim village, this Muslim town, there was a scholar standing with his robes and his hat, and he's here and he knows everything and everybody respects him for his knowledge. And then one day, he's standing by his front door looking out, and he has his friend with him, and all of a sudden a very old man comes with a cane, like this. Very old, little raggedy, little poor looking. And he says to the scholar, "Oh scholar, I want to know about wudu. What is wudu? You know, when you wash your hands and your feet and your mouth and everything before prayer, right? I mean, you wouldn't be like playing a game or playing football and then just immediately turn straight to pray to Allah. You have to prepare. You take a little transition. So all of a sudden,